Welcome to the Blind Centered Audio Description Chats. These are the edited recordings of the Blind Centered Audio Description live chats.
The live is the most fun part. We get together, we start with a question, and then we invite up anybody from the audience who wants to come and chat with us, agree, disagree, shed light on something that we hadn't thought about before, which is Nefertiti's favorite.
I'm Nefertiti Matos Olivares, and I'm a bilingual professional voiceover artist who specializes in audio description narration. I'm also a fervent cultural access advocate and a community organizer.
I'm Cheryl Green, an access artist, audio describer, and captioner.
And I'm Thomas Reed, host and producer, Read My Mind Radio, voice artist, audio description narrator, consultant, and advocate.
Recording now.
Well, hello, this is Nefertiti Matos Olivares, and this is our first time that we're doing a bit of a hybrid session, and the first time we are presenting some content, sort of cross-pollinating some work that we do with the Blind Centered Audio Description Chat series that Cheryl Green, Thomas Reed, and I have been collectively working on for a while now, and also the work that we do by way of the Social Audio Description Collective, or SADC, where we actually create and carefully craft, from the writing to the blind QC, the narration, the sound design, all of it, some culturally competent audio description in English and Spanish and other languages. So if you don't know about SADC, check us out. We are the Social Audio Description Collective. If you don't know about our previous offerings at the Blind Centered Audio Description Chat series, you can check that out too by way of Thomas Reed's Read My Mind Radio. That's R to the E-I-D, like his last name, y'all, on his podcast feed as well. Wow, I am here and I am happy to be here. And we have Thomas with us, we have Cheryl with us, we have Oliver Baker, the writer of the audio description for the two films that we will be watching and listening to today. And we have Carmen Papaya with us.
So we're going to show two films, and then we're going to talk to Carmen about the films, talk a little bit about what led into creating the films, talk a little bit about the AD, and we want to hear from y'all too. So if there's questions about the films that you want to ask Carmen, you'll have an opportunity to do that. Or if you want to ask or make a comment on the audio description, you can do that too. Quick note. We're not including the audio of the films in this episode. However, you can go on over to this episode's blog post at readmymind.com and I'll link you there. Then come back and enjoy the conversation with both filmmaker and AD production team. All right, back to the episode. So I think it's time to welcome Carmen Papaya to the Zoom room. And maybe, Carmen, if you want to introduce yourself, tell folks who you are, tell us a little bit about who you are and what you do.
Yeah, for sure. It's Carmen speaking. I'm calling in from the stolen land of the Musqueam, Squamish, and Tsleil-Waututh people, colonially known as Vancouver. I'm in my room right now. I'm wearing maybe one of the same caps as in the film, a brown sort of wool cap, and a colorful button shirt with short sleeves today. I'm not sure which colors, unfortunately, sorry, but know that they are vibrant and festive. I call myself a non-visual artist. I make mostly like participatory projects. I do performance, installation, I do curating as well. And this project, Impaired, is a co-production in collaboration with my brother Antonio. He's not able to be here today because he's sick, unfortunately, but it's been a joy to work with him on this project. He's also a macro photographer too, so I can talk a little bit about the work that we did with the Social Audio Description Collective around the macro photos as well. But this film series is something that we got some COVID era grant funding for by the Canada Council. And the films were recently just in an exhibition in Zurich. It was an exhibition called Interdependencies about various forms of care. And these films were shown in a functional grow room that my brother designed and built. Well, he had help building it. The production team at the museum was amazing and was able to put everything together to our specs. It was like a replica of the grow room that we have here in Vancouver, but it was made to be wheelchair accessible for the exhibition. And it was like a presentation space for these videos, and as well as my brother's macro photos of the cannabis life cycle.
Could you talk a little bit about what led to the creation of this film?
Yeah, I guess, yeah, I think it was this kind of deep collaboration that me and my brother had developed just around my pain management and like the growing of medicinal cannabis through access to cannabis program through Health Canada. I think it was just like interesting as we were digging into this project of like how do we set up a grow so my brother who is low vision can manage it. We were just doing this, like, I guess, problem solving as you do when you just jump into something. How is this going to work? And I think we wanted to show that process a bit. But there was also this like wonderful thing that happened when my brother started growing cannabis for me too, is that we got to talk a lot more about disability and my brother's vision loss too. And as you saw in the film, he just recently sort of picked up a cane, and he's still kind of like in that space of when to use it, if he should use it. And I just felt like this experience really brought us together. My family is very much involved too in the processing of the cannabis. So we have these like trimming parties, and we'll listen to some of the same tunes that you played today, Thomas, and order some pizza and trim cannabis together. And it just became this like space for us to explore all these things that we were excited about and maybe wanted to explore, like tactility, like how does that play into this process of growing cannabis. And yeah, my brother, he developed a photo series out of this process too. And it was really a space for him to like come back to his photo practice and make photos that he was really proud of, that he could include in the show. I just think it's just been a generative space for us that we wanted to show to others. There was some reference to hallucinations in those videos. One of the longer term goals is for my brother to actually breed a variety of cannabis that activates my visual hallucinations. So I have quite vibrant and active hallucinations connected to my visual condition. Thomas hosted myself and a few artists on Read My Mind talking about them. With certain kinds of cannabis, these hallucinations are even more amplified and they take on different characteristics. Through our research, my brothers found there are a handful of cannabis varieties that are, known hallucinogenic strains. And so we've got our hands on a few of those, and we've grown a few, and we've made concentrates out of them, and I've kind of tested on myself. And they're usually, the ones that I really love are varieties that have a sort of psychedelic effect, but also are good pain relievers. I mentioned my pain condition. I have sickle cell anemia, so yeah, I have a lot of pain that cannabis actually is really helpful for. And prior to transitioning onto cannabis, I was on Dilaudid. It was just a very different experience, and I mean, like my life was a lot different before I transitioned to cannabis, and now for the most part, I mean, I still use Dilaudid, when I'm having like an intense crisis that might bring me to hospital or debilitating. But for the most part, I use cannabis and yeah, and some psilocybin as well. So yeah.
You know, it's interesting you mentioned the music at the beginning because I was looking for medicinal cannabis songs. I didn't find any.
I know. You don't really hear people talk about getting medicated, do you?
No, you don't.
But yeah, I mean, there should be like maybe there's some awesome like Crip hip hop artists that maybe can get into that and
Yeah, maybe a participant today might have something for us, maybe.
I want you to go back a little bit because you mentioned the macro photography. Can you describe it? Because I'm sure not many people. Well, I
yeah,
shouldn't say I'm sure, but I have a feeling many people might not be familiar with what that
yeah.
is.
Totally. And I'll describe it as much as I know through the process. It's a very like technical way of capturing an image, and so what you're doing is you're using some lenses that give you a super like zoomed up view of what you're taking a photo of, and it kind of turns into something else altogether at that such a zoomed in sort of view. And so my understanding is that you take hundreds of photos that kind of get pulled together, on the computer into like a composite, basically, that is a close view of the subject. And my brother was taking photos of the cannabis life cycle from seed to flower. And so some of these, like if you can imagine like a cannabis bud, and you know that the medicinal part is the oil or resin on the bud. If you take a photo, a macro photo of that, these little blobs of oil or resin, you can see them. They're called trichomes, and they kind of look like, and I think this was the magic of Oliver, described them as like a mushroom kingdom or something. They just look like this world unto itself. I think my brother really wants to bring people in to this subject matter, medicinal plants and mushrooms, and the subjects that he's drawn to. But and he said he doesn't want people to pressure people to see something in his images, like this pressure to see. I felt that too as my vision has changed over the years, especially when I'm in a medical setting. Like, can you see this? Like, we're testing what you can see. Um, my brother really wants people to have a space where they can see what they want, and really make their own stories about what they're seeing as well in his images, which was really lovely when we were able to collaborate with you all on the description, because it was a very involved process which not involved in that like it was too involved. I think it was appropriately involved, um, because we got to have conversation, me and Antonio, about what he saw and how he would describe it. So I'm using a screen reader, and I heard Oliver's note coming through, which was that Cheryl, it was Cheryl's magic, who Cheryl described the trichomes as the mushrooms in the mushroom kingdom. So just clarifying there.
Why did you come to SADC? Like, was there something specific?
I mean, you are the superstars of audio description, like all in one place. So I mean, it's kind of hard to go anywhere else.
High praise. Thank you.
I mean, I've known Cheryl since probably 2010 or 2011 too, and I've been a lover of Thomas's work for a while. Yeah, I just thought for this production to really like explore what that collaborating with you might turn into, and I thought we had a really great experience. So
Cool.
yeah, thank
Cool.
you.
I didn't mean that to sound like a softball pitch there.
No, but please take it because it's very true.
Also, just curious because you and Cheryl, you all sort of met around audio description. Is that correct?
Carmen is the person who introduced me to audio description. One of my short films was playing. I was so proud of the captions. Yay, I have a captioned film. And I heard somebody whispering through my whole film. I'm very distractible. And I was like, oh, rude. what is going on here? And afterward, I asked somebody, who were the rude people talking through my whole film? Oh, I'm the center of the universe. Why were people whispering? This, not the literal words I said, but somebody explained to me that, well, the film didn't have any audio description, and so somebody was whispering and describing the visuals to Carmen, and it was face plant, face palm, whatever you call it. I planted my palm on my face. So that was my introduction to audio description. And then Carmen, I don't know where you lived then, but we apparently lived on the same bus route, and somebody encouraged me to walk with you to the bus stop because maybe you weren't familiar with that neighborhood, and except that we got so lost, even though I'd been riding that bus for 10 years at that point. I get so confused sometimes. And anyway, we had a lot of laughs about getting lost, but you were so gentle and encouraging in talking about, there's 1,000 points of entry to access. Pick one and start there. You were not judgmental. You enjoyed my film, I think, even though it wasn't described. And so that's how I got started. And many years later, when you started asking me to do audio description for your stuff, I was pretty blown away.
I love that story. Cheryl, do you want to talk a little bit about the process of describing images? The idea that Carmen and Antonio laid out about wanting folks to be able to see whatever it is they see. Just real quick, I think that's the way I think about our hallucinations as well, Carmen.
Mm-hmm.
It's really interesting. So Cheryl, yeah, talk about that.
Carmen has a wonderful technique that was developed in the Simon Fraser University Pandemic as a Portal project, which is the phone call. So the phone call came from this idea that if you're trying to write an image description, imagine you're on the phone with somebody and telling them what it is. And Carmen took that 10 levels higher when we were working on that project and literally did a phone call with, I think it was Heather. And the two of you recorded your phone call and you talked about not only literally what was in the picture, but your concepts and your feelings and your emotions. And you gave me that and I transcribed it and I used it to build the image description. So for the macro photo series, you and Antonio did the same thing. You recorded these calls for me, which was amazing because I didn't know what a trichome was before. So y'all used technical terms. And then very beautifully, you would ask Antonio a lot of questions. That's one of the things that is so exciting to the collaboration. You would ask him to share some details. And then I did research online, learned a lot more about cannabis. And I used your phone call transcript as the basis for writing the description so that I knew I was getting what was important to y'all, but that you let me build also whatever else I wanted to.
When you think about describing an image, you would just see, like the only context you have is the image, but no, you build off of other things as well. So that's cool. Oliver, what about you, sir? What kind of research did you have to do to get into describing cannabis?
Research. I think it was just here and there. Sometimes it was just a question, like that hat that Carmen's wearing, whether it was fleece or wool, or whether I could call it a beanie or something else. And sometimes it was after the fact, like I guessed that in one of the opening scenes that a bud was being rolled and the leaves were being pressed against it just to narrow it up. But it was really just some leaves and I guess some B-roll in effect. And so I had to change that, not research beforehand. Because Carmen, you were doing a lot of traveling during that time, so I couldn't be in real-time contact about any question I had necessarily.
I really loved your all's process too for getting the scripts to where they could to narration too.
Yeah, I think this was probably an unusual project in my experience, in the amount of and the level of evolution that happened after I submitted my draft. One thing was that the animator, Heather Kai Smith came in to the discussion pretty late, and so some important points that she made reached me late, and so I was making changes, I guess mainly to the pre-show, but a little bit during the show based on that.
It's not the ideal way to go about like developing an audio described piece. Like the footage was shot before we looped you in. The animation has to be done after the video is like firmed up and like complete. And yeah, it's just it's a wacky timeline, I guess, that we're working on. And we're also trying to like meet the deadline of the exhibition opening and the delivery date for that exhibition in Zurich. I'm continuously apologizing because like I feel like you need like double the amount of time to do this well. And I mean, it's done amazingly.
I think some applause is due too, because we had a conversation with Eric that led to something that never happens, which was he introduced a little bit of a gap. He changed the editing a little bit to accommodate just a very brief line of audio description that we wouldn't have been able to include otherwise, to make sure that blind and low vision audience members would understand what was happening during the important scene down the steps. And if things had gone the way they usually do, and with another filmmaker, with other filmmakers, that adaptation wouldn't have happened.
How much of a change was it actually, Oliver? Like in terms of time, like how much time did you actually need to make that difference?
I think I asked for less than a second in one place and a little bit more than a second in another place. We had an interesting kind of negotiation about where they'd be inserted, because Eric sort of cherished a particular pause for the suspense, and for him, the 80 voice coming in there would have interfered with that. So he put the pause somewhere else, but it worked out fine. But the interesting conversation, which kind of gets into, I don't know, an unusual amount of gray area of audio description, was everybody had a different opinion about it. The filmmaker, Eric, who wasn't used to watching films with audio description, felt the narration was a distraction. Thomas, I think you were not distracted, and you appreciated the extra information that would have been provided there. And then Antonio, who is losing vision and still new to using a cane, for him, he actually appreciated the silent pause that Eric wanted to have in there, because it was not old hat to him in the same way it might have been to you, Thomas, as more of an expert cane user. That affected where we put the narration.
Which goes into our approach in terms of audio description and that blind-centered approach. Why would we tailor the AD to someone who's not going to use AD? But it's so funny how often that's a big part of what we do when working with filmmakers, right? Just kind of explaining that and explaining what we mean by a blind-centered approach. And that's a perfect example of it right there.
There was something really interesting in the making of the installation at the museum in Zurich too. Because these films were audio described, like we could watch them outside of the grow room, because even when we were outside of the installation, we could still hear the AD and like watch the film, which was really nice.
That's access.
I'd be happy to answer any questions about like the art stuff, but also cannabis stuff too, and my whatever you want to know.
Did you go back to retraining for O&M? Did you get any more training?
No.
Okay.
I feel like my brother can give some pointers, but I'm pretty like stuck in my ways of using the cane like I like to.
Yeah. And you use a black cane. Your cane is black? Is that the one you always use? Or
I do. Yeah. I just order them without the tape on them, and they're graphite canes from Ambutech in Winnipeg. And I get them with they have these like silvery kind of joints that yeah, like hold the
Mm-hmm.
segments together.
The collapsible parts
Yeah.
there? Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, yes, yeah. And
Gotcha.
a wooden handle. Yeah,
Oh, no, wooden handle. Okay. Very cool.
yeah.
I want to know, finally and for all time, is that cap fleece or pashmina? It's not a coarse weave wool.
I think it is wool. I mean, I have two of the same. This one looks more, see, this is more brushed. See, this is the alt alternative. I have a green hat, the same as I'm wearing right now, but green in my hand, and it's more soft. I think this is, yeah, more of a like a finer wool than the one I'm wearing right now. But yeah,
Huh.
I don't know.
The mystery will have to be prolonged. We'll meet sometime, hat in hand.
You could read the tag, or I could get someone to read the tag for me and send you.
Carmen, I value very much friendship and family and all of this, and I just really enjoyed witnessing that communication between your brother and you navigating with your canes and talking about how, you're using little body parts to detect and to keep
Mhm.
safe and to gather information and all of. I just think there's something so beauteous about that. Whereas, people can think, oh, how sad or what have you. And I just I was really moved by that. This idea that it's a
Mhm.
difficult time and yet you have your brother, your flesh and blood right there to share in it with you and to share of yourself with him. And that's
Yeah.
captured through the growing that you do. And I heard
Mhm.
you here say today that it's become sort of a family endeavor. So I just
Mhm.
really want to congratulate you and really appreciate that you chose to share that with the
Thank
world.
you. Oh, that's really nice. My experience with the cannabis grow with my brother growing for me has been like a really positive experience where I feel like I've really been able to like claim some agency with regard to my pain management. And it's very different than conversations that I might have in the medical setting. It's based in a relationship and even, when we whatever for whatever reason have friction, we still have the grow that we have to talk about. And to, that kind of uh, anchors us. I have to
Yes.
say too that I with my condition, so I have retinitis pigmentosa and then sickle cell anemia, and my brother has shares the visual condition with me. My sister shares the blood condition with me. So we have different. I have different relationships with both of my siblings. I carry both of those conditions. They each have one of my parents who we got these from are not symptomatic. So we really kind of have banded together in certain ways around our conditions and in really deep ways and like for years and years until I would say 2020. My sister was like the only person I really could talk to about sickle cell. I didn't really know anybody else, and it wasn't until I met someone through disability art that also has sickle cell and is like, this is who I am and this is experience. This is my experience that I was really able to like, even explore that part of my experience. And my brother gets very too, like my brother gets very specific about like, what he's growing for me, how it's working for me, what kinds of things we need to change. Like it's a dialogue about my pain management in a very kind of this exchange that I might not have in another setting. Um, yeah.
Yeah, it sounds very personal and like literal cultivation of care. Literally, you have,
Mhm.
yeah, right. I got some bars. But yeah, you're literally cultivating the care, and the cannabis is the
Mhm.
tangible proof of that connection.
Right.
And it's just beautiful, beautiful, beautiful,
You, you,
beautiful.
I, I should say, like there are a lot of people who serve this role in their communities, like as a caregiver grower for people who are pain patients or who have other chronic illnesses, and it is such an interesting relationship with others in your community. You have this passion for growing and maybe even like supporting them in the ways that you can through the grow, but like you get to know them so personally because I mean, there's a lot of like yeah, growers, they grow for like say a handful of patients, like 15, sometimes 30. But they're getting to know these people and what they need and what works for them too. So it really is a lovely kind of experience. Some cultivators too grow strains specifically for people who need what they provide. I just think that's really wonderful.
Carmen, is that the term, caregiver growers?
Yeah, yeah,
Okay,
yeah.
okay. Because I know someone who might be interested in doing something like that. Yeah, that's very cool.
Yeah,
Very
I'm
cool.
learning so much. I don't know about these things. So quite an education for me, and I think for others. And I also think we had a hand raise, if I caught that. Susanna Mars?
Yeah. Hi, this is Suzanne.
Hi.
I just felt I enjoyed it so much, and I love the juicy language that you used. I love the marshmallow tip cane. Um, and similarly to Nefertiti, I felt that nurturance of the plants and the caring among living things is so beautiful because it really crosses between the relationships and the care and the really caring for all living things in that generous and loving way. And the relationships, I appreciated again, like Nefertiti mentioned, the joy of your relationships and that connection that just suffuses the whole work. It's very beautiful. I appreciated it. And Thomas, I thought your voice was just lovely mixed in the mix, it was all
Always.
just beautiful.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Do we have anybody else interested in saying something, asking a question, maybe sharing something that we don't know about related to this subject?
I do want to ask you a little bit about the ear cleansing.
Oh yeah.
Can you talk about a little bit about, the way you look at sound and just think about in terms of non-visual and what the ear cleansing thing was really all about?
Yeah. So when I was in my undergrad at Simon Fraser University, I took some acoustic communications classes, and that is like the university where that whole practice and field of soundscape studies emerged. In the late 60s, there was this thing called the World Soundscape Project, and it was initiated by R. Murray Schafer, who I talked about in that piece. But he basically got together like a handful of researchers who went out into the environment and just started recording sound and listening and developing terminology for what they were noticing. And this whole field of study kind of like, we have the word soundscape. We have various ways of even protecting the acoustic environment from noise and sound pollution, noise pollution, sorry. And I just heard about this practice of like, okay, it's sort of like the focus you get when you shut your eyes and are trying to focus your non-visual senses. You just kind of plug your ears for a time and then you unplug them and then you are acutely aware of like what sounds are where. And I don't know, for me, it was a process of learning how to like how sound was spatialized when at the beginning of my vision loss, like starting to use a cane, I would have to spend time in a room, and I used to run this reading series poetry event at this bar here called the Railway Club, and I remember just like it was so acoustically cluttered in that space. And I would sit there and I was like, I can't make sense of any of this. But like eventually, like I just started like active listening in that space, and I could, voices, I kind of recognized who was talking, where they were, like what the dimensions of the space were. I kind of adopted this active listening practice through acoustic communications and these practices of like that whole crew around that World Sounds project. but I think, without that tool, I would find my own way. And I know, sorry, I have to mention that a friend, Andy Slater, who is a blind artist, he really he dislikes our Murray Schaefer. He's like, oh, he should not get the spotlight. We should the spotlight because we've been learning how to listen before there was a term for it.
When Antonio said that once he took the earplugs out and it was about 30 seconds that he was looking for something new. He wanted to hear something different. Mm-hmm. And I was just like, oh, wow, that's really interesting, because there's sort of like a rule of thumb when creating audio pieces that says, yeah, things should change every 30 seconds because folks' interest change. And so I was like, oh, wow, look at that. I don't know if they're related, but he just so happened to say that he was looking for something after 30 seconds. So it jumped out at me. Anyone else have anything?
Go ahead, Susan.
I was very touched by the scene where your brother was describing what made the plant happy and how you could tell the plant was happy by the angle of the leaves. I have a green thumb, and I raise a lot of plants. And I once went into a car dealer to wait for my car, and the plant that was in the waiting room was very miserable and unhappy. And I went over to the receptionist and I said, please help this plant. It's very unhappy. And she just looked at me. So when the car was returned to me, I took the plant home and took care of it. And that one scene reminded me of all the times that I notice when plants are happy, but I never thought of touching the plant to see if it was happy. I notice it by looking at it. So I'm going to touch my plants more now.
That's really nice. I love that. He is so attuned to their needs, and like he spends time with them so much. And when you're in the grow room too, you feel like you are there. They have a presence to them, and
Yes.
yeah, I really like that. And you were attuned to the needs of that plant when you walked into that car dealership. Which, yeah, I think it is a relationship that you have with these living things that you are growing. It's quite amazing to, like that the whole process to like from seed to like when, I mean, they're so fragile too as well. Like when we had our outdoor grow that there was that was shown in the films, it was on this patio outdoors. There's about 10 plants out there. They got to over like 6 feet tall, maybe 7 feet tall eventually. And in Vancouver, you plant them in April and then they're ready in maybe October. We have like a lot of wind and rain by then, so it's not a great place for outdoor growing. And I remember because like my parents were also keeping their eye on the plants sometimes, they were like, oh, I remember getting this call that it sounded like they were like on a ship or something. They were like, oh no, like these plants are gonna tip over and we're gonna lose them. And so it was, I really think it's like damage control. The challenge is just protecting them so they can cross the finish line by the end, because they just grow so tall. And with the weather conditions here, it's just not ideal. But those kinds of things, like, I mean, of course, like it really just, my brother was so affected by that. And of course, you put months and months of care into these plants, and you want them to, make it to the end. And then, each of them holds like, 100, sometimes more, 100 grams or more of cannabis. And yeah, like if it's not ready yet, there's only so much you can do to, to make it usable. Yeah, it doesn't get its full growth cycle.
You sound like what you were just saying is a metaphor for raising children.
Yeah, and I was going to
When did
say
he?
life in general, right? We invest in
Yeah.
things and sometimes they fruit and sometimes they rot. I think it's a beautiful metaphor for these things.
Just don't smoke your children. So sorry, I couldn't resist that one.
That's a good one, Thomas. Good advice. Life hack.
No, hopefully that's not good advice.
Hey, earlier you did say cannibal. I'm just
I
saying.
know I did say that.
I just want to be sure to thank Carmen and Antonio in absentia for letting us, the SADC and with the Blind Audio Chat to, premiere these cool movies. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
100%.
Can people watch these films anywhere? Are you showing them in any film festivals? Do you have
You
plans
know,
for the future?
we're gonna launch our Impaired website because like it's just gonna like show our progress, but I think they're first gonna be available through SADC's site, I believe.
Premiering and then living in for at least a while as streamables on our website.
Yeah, so super happy about that. And we're continuing to work on, we have a show coming up, another exhibition me and my brother are in 2026 at the Mackenzie Art Gallery in Saskatchewan. We have all sorts of plans to do, well, we're still, in this long-term process developing a hallucinogenic pain reliever strain of cannabis. My brothers proposed a name for that strain, Tripping Hazard, which I like.
Love it.
Yeah.
Oh my God. I love that.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm a
But
sucker for a play on words. I love it.
if anyone shows up in Vancouver, we are legal for recreational use here, and I do have some homemade concentrates that I'd love to share, especially with folks who do have visual hallucinations, because one of the things I've been loving is talking to people like Thomas and Andy and our friend Colin and others about their visual hallucinations and also like how cannabis might affect them. Yeah.
Absolutely. Let me just, hold on. I was just on flights.com, Vancouver.
I was thinking when I was in Vancouver last year, damn it, I wish I would have known of you at least, because I would have definitely made an effort to try and connect. But I know you now, and I work for a Vancouver company, so
Cool.
yeah, I might come through.
For sure.
You bring me something back,
Thank you so
Neff.
much. You bet, Thomas. Absolutely. Well, thank you again, Carmen, for your time, for your talent, for your knowledge. And thank you, Oliver, for being here as part of the process. Cheryl and Thomas as co-hosts and co-members of the BCAD and SADC. We have a monopoly on all these letters, y'all. And yeah, do we have any final thoughts as we shut this baby down? Okay, I think that answers
Smoke 'em if you
that.
got 'em.
Absolutely.
Thank you so much, everybody. I hope you all enjoy today and imbibe or partake in whatever ways you feel comfortable. I do love rolling a joint, actually. I love the tactile experience of, I use these they're called like raw cone wraps or something, king size cone wraps. And I just love filling them and twisting them. And I guess it's like a nice pairing to our like dreary weather here. Sitting on the patio in the rain, with a joint.
Sounds good.
Yeah.
Heck
Sounds
yeah,
good.
that's artistry in and of itself.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely.
And this has been a joint production.
Nice,
Sure has.
Oliver. Nice. All right, everybody. Thank you so much. Till next time.
Cool. Well, that concludes this week's conversation. Why don't y'all keep the conversation going on social media?
Use hashtag ADFUBU for us by us. Hashtag describe everything and hashtag audio description.
And hey, you know we're out here, right? Gathered and galvanized, y'all. If you haven't joined us yet, what are you waiting for? You can find us in the LinkedIn audio description group and the AD Twitter community. We know that your participation will only make these spaces better.